a minute about the way that the concept of revolution has been so discredited. Why is it that the concept of revolution has been so discredited in recent years? By which I mean, and I don't mean just among us, but even among us. I mean, but that been discredited in the sense of seeming to many not only impossible but also undesirable. And I think it's been discredited partly in terms of the notion of transition, let me give an explanation of how I see that. And it could be another explanation of what we mean by the becoming prince of the common, or the becoming prince of the multitude, the institutionalization of the common. Those are our sort of slogans about this. If we think of revolution as the creation of democracy, let me take that for granted, that we think of revolution as the creation of a real democracy. It seems to me that there have been two primary ways that we've thought revolution in this sense, and it's been commonly conceived. And these, I think, are cause of the discrediting of the notion, let's say. The first two simplest notions are this: throughout most of modernity, the way people have understood the concept of revolution is really about the replacement of a ruling elite with a different and often better ruling elite. Most of the modern revolutions have really taken place in that way. And these have been, I don't mean to completely discount this, these have been enormously powerful and have acted to enact agrarian reform, to alleviate poverty, in many ways to transform society. But of course, one should first object to that that notion of revolution isn't the creation of democracy, but at best a kind of benevolent aristocracy, whether elected or not. It might be better changed, but it doesn't really count for us as revolution. The transformation, the substitution of one ruling elite with a better ruling elite. There's another notion of revolution which I think is quite common among us, which thinks of revolution this way. Revolution is the destruction of the minority structures of government and giving power to the majority or to the population as a whole. This is thought of as revolution and as the construction of democracy, based on a notion, it seems to me, that once the oppressive structures are removed, that people will be able to express their natural abilities to cooperate together, their abilities of mutual aid, and then to rule themselves democratically. This is one stream within, and sometimes a caricature of anarchist notions of revolution. In other words, based on a notion of our natural abilities, that we are naturally democratic, cooperative, etc., once we remove the structures of authoritarian rule, that we will naturally proceed to democracy. The objection to this, let's call it a realist objection, is that people don't know how to rule themselves. People don't know how to cooperate. They don't have the capacities to be democratic. And that simply then removing the structures of oppression and domination won't lead and can't lead immediately to democracy. It seems to me that these two positions are based on two opposing notions of human nature. Like, there's one notion of human nature that people are essentially incapable of self-rule and therefore must be ruled, and we'll call revolution then the substitution of better rulers. There's the other, that people are fundamentally good and able to cooperate with each other, etc., and therefore revolution will be simply the removal of rulers. It seems to me that rather than thinking in this way about human nature being good or bad, it's much more useful to think about revolution as the transformation of human nature itself. The important thing for politics about human nature is not whether it's good or bad. It's that it's transformable, that it's plastic. This seems to me actually the extremely important way that Lenin poses the problem, and the problem of transition. What Lenin writes in State and Revolution on the eve of the Bolshevik Revolution is that he poses exactly the same problem I just said. He said, on the one hand, we can't simply abolish the state and institute a new democracy immediately. He says, people as they are today, human nature as it is today, he says, is not capable of democracy. People have bosses at work, and so they need bosses in politics. They're trained to be subordinate, and that they have those habits. So we can't imagine an immediate transformation. On the other hand, we can't simply pretend that a communist revolution is the rule of a state, a different state. So what Lenin poses is rather this problem of transition. What he says, what we need is a transition that will transform human nature and make people capable of democracy. And so by transform human nature, I mean transform people's habits to make it so they're no longer used to being and trained to be subordinate. They no longer need managers and leaders, and rather can rule themselves. Lenin poses, though, exactly a strictly dialectical form of transition. In fact, this is the way that Slavoj Žižek is really Leninist. He's right. So, for instance, Slavoj Žižek, in a recent book in The Parallax View, he says, he makes a joke about a Brecht poem, when Brecht is writing about the Berlin uprising. And he says, Brecht writes bitterly against the socialist authorities. Brecht writes that perhaps we need to dismiss the people and to create a new one, as if that's what the socialist regime is doing. And Slavoj says, yes, exactly right. We need to destroy the people and create a new one. And I think that is Lenin's notion of this, that the human nature has to be transformed. And that's the theory of the dictatorship of the proletariat. What the dictatorship of the proletariat must do, and this is how it's dialectical, it must negate democracy, impose dictatorship, in order to transform human nature, in order then to negate that negation itself and institute a democracy. See how it's dialectical? It involves the two negations. First, you negate democracy by imposing the dictatorship in order to transform the people and make them capable of democracy, and then we can come to this second transition. Now, my feeling about these transition theories is any time someone talks to you about transition like this, you better put your hand on your wallet because they're trying to steal something from you. It's that transitions, I mean, one of the problems, of course, is that they never come to an end. Is that the transition always keeps going. But the second, more profound problem, and now I can get back to our argument, is that it seems to me that it never functions in this negative way. You can't, through dictatorship, transform human nature to become more democratic. You can't, in a way, train people in democracy by its opposite. Rather, we have to have a different notion of transition. So in a way, I'm perfectly agree with this need for transition. What revolution has to be is the transformation of human nature, but it has to be the transformation of human nature to be able to be democratic through a strictly positive route. In other words, democracy is something you can only learn by doing, through participatory structures, through participatory experiments. So that seems to me what we would, in order to rehabilitate also the concept of revolution, or how we could think revolution today, I'm saying it in very abstract terms, we have to answer these kind of questions. What kind of training will transform human nature to be capable of democracy? Or what are the democratic means, rather than the dictatorial means, that can create the conditions of a new democracy? And that seems to me the only way today to make revolution possible. This is what then Tony wanted to talk about as the becoming prince of the multitude and the institutionalization of the common. It's the process of the process of a transformation of human nature in order to be able to, for the multitude to be able to rule the common itself. A kind of process of self-transformation, or the transformation of human nature to make us capable of democracy.